Is it on? Check, check. It works. All right, so we're just gonna kick it off. Good morning. I am Radu Toderic. I'm a film critic. Obviously, besides me, it's Ben Wheatley. Now, I was thinking I'm not gonna go into details. I'm just gonna assume that pretty much everyone knows who Ben Wheatley is and what he does for a living. But in the very unlikely case that somebody doesn't, I guess it will kind of become obvious as we speak. Now I'm just gonna give you like two or three thoughts about Ben Wheatley from my perspective as a film viewer. I was just blown away by a little movie of his called Kill List. Right, so little, not in terms of importance, in terms of budget, in terms of importance. There's another thing altogether, because I think when everything is said and done, and film historians will write the recent film history, probably Kill List will be somewhere over with the revival of what we call folk horror. Right. So what I'm trying to say by this, that Ben did it before it was cool, and A24 took it and went with it. Right. So without further ado, I was just thinking about. I mean, I was actually talking with Ben earlier, and I guess it's a masterclass. The point will be, I guess you are here for asking Ben questions. So whenever you feel like it, I mean, I'm just gonna start with a couple of warm-up questions, but I guess it would be great if you could try and if you would intervene at any point and just ask for a mic. There are, I guess, two mics over here. So just ask for a mic, ask questions. I think we will both be delighted. So let's go for it. I was just wondering. I guess let's start with the horror part, right? I mean, as a horror director, I mean, what I probably any horror director I would like to ask any horror director is, how come you like to scare people? And when this passion started, and when did you got scared so beautifully that you decided to be sort of a horror director?
Good question. I don't know. I've always liked horror, and I like cinema that has a binary reaction. So with horror, you know when you got it right because people scream, and with comedy, you know you got it right because people laugh. It's harder with drama because they kind of just like shuffle in their seats when they all cry. I suppose is the best you can get out of them in drama, but. Yeah, so and I felt like my sensibility has always been quite dark, and even when I'm doing dramas, they have elements of horror in them. But when and comedy has elements of horror in it. So, and I think horror itself is a very flexible genre that fits across all sorts of types of storytelling. So it's my go-to as a human being, I think. So I'm always making horror films, but trying not to.
Wonderful answer. I was just wondering, I mean, are there some horrors that you saw when you were very young and got scared so badly that you want to make a version of them, or kind of like sort of that story your own?
No, not necessarily. I think I used to have a lot of nightmares as a kid, and I remember getting asked about what's the thing that scares me the most, and I got asked in an interview, and I was like, the 1970s. And I think that's the thing. Like, I always, growing up in the 70s under the idea of immediate nuclear annihilation was something that did prey on my mind as a little kid, and I would have nightmares about that. And I think that stuck with me. And then various, family stuff happened and tragedy stuff, and that was all kind of quite heavy. And I think that it's more that, and it's like in the world of film, it's like you always get asked about how your film relates to other films, but I feel like my films, for me anyway, relate back to real life stuff, and then they find a way of finding genre and then working through. It's like, I know, like I'd go to America and get interviewed about Kill List, and they talk about Wicker Man as if it's a historical document, like it's a documentary or something. I'm like, well, no, it's not, and it's kind of history, and it's the same as everywhere in Europe. I think it's like wherever you are, you're standing in a load of blood, basically, from hundreds of years, And where I used to live in England, I'd walk my dog on an Iron Age hill fort, So I felt like I was close to the history all the time, and that history of struggle and violence and all those things. And so it's that first before it's film. But then I find like, you know, influences are something. I used to be a bit like touchy about, people going, it's a bit like this and it's a bit like that, and I'd be, no, it's meant to be original. But I think the thing is that film history is like you know, it's obviously the cliche, standing on the shoulders of giants, but it's also like it's a cultural mulch that you're standing on that seeps into stuff. And I find that if I'm writing something, I make specific references which are more academic, but then I find when I make the film, there are other references that have come in that I didn't even realise, and when I'm making them, go, oh shit, it's that kind of film, I forgot, you know, or I get all the way through the editing and realise, I've been influenced by something much quite culturally quite strong, which I haven't noticed until I've seen the final piece.
Right. Well, I guess we're at the Hard House Film Festival, and probably it's the expected reactions. People see films through the lenses of film.
Yeah.
I was watching at your latest bulk, and I was thinking when I saw those nuclear explosions, I was thinking about Threads.
Yeah.
I mean, as you were talking about this fear of nuclear annihilation, that's sort of like a docudrama. What happens when they eventually drop the atomic bomb?
Anyone here seen Threads?
It's a film from the 80s.
It's one of the most horrible films ever made, basically. It's and they showed it to it. You know, I saw it as a little kid. It's a bit like, do you ever see the American one, The Day After? It's like that. It's much better than The Day After, basically. You know, and it's as and when I've done lists of my favourite horror films, it's up there. It's that and Ghost of the Civil Dead, the Hillcop movie, or Lady Bird. It's like they're not traditional horror films, but they're films that are fucking horrible.
Like Ken Loach, because that's an undercurrent of your films. There's this British social realism, and I was thinking about it could be Ken Loach, it could be Alan Clark.
It's Alan Clark.
It's Alan Clark,
my main reference there. I mean, Alan Clark films terrified me as a kid, absolutely to my core. And they would show them in school as well. It's like there's no escaping it. You know, they'd take you into a dark room and show you Scum and go, that's going to happen to you. Scum was a drama about Borstal and kind of teenage delinquents, and they go, this is what's going to happen to you if you fuck about. And we go, what? And then I got showed Threads at school as well, just to cheer you up as well. This is this is what's going to happen if the adults fuck up, you know.
You know, I wanted to get back to that. So, of course, there's the influences, but I always question in my mind horror as a genre. I think there's specific fear. You were talking about nightmares, but there's specific social fears. I mean, every time I see a zombie film, it's pretty much, it's fear of of stupid people to some extent. I hate the word, but
I think zombie films are Civil War movies.
Right, exactly. I mean,
and it dehumanizes the other people.
Exactly.
And you start to think about it and going, they're shooting their neighbors who are ill.
Right, so we have this tendency of watching the other side political as that they're brainwashed, and I think a zombie film is a perfect illustration for that, a perfect metaphor. You made one yourself recently, the series Generation Z, right? Yeah. All right, so you kind of went through a couple of the genres, but you were also mentioning comedy. So how do you work in terms of comedy? And there's an extra question there because I'm fascinated by you write your screenplays with your partner Amy Jump.
Some of them, yeah.
Some of them. So how does that work? And who takes the credit? Who takes the glory for it in the end? But how does it work creatively in the first place?
Well, that's a big question. I mean, it's like how it works. It works differently every time we sit down to write. So. And Amy's written scripts on her own without me, and that I've directed, and then we've done script. And sometimes it's who starts the script makes a big difference to how the script is written. So if I've started it, and then she'll come in and rewrite it, or if what doesn't happen very often is she writes something and then I rewrite her. So. But there might be, I'd give her guidance notes, but I would never rewrite her words, but she will happily just delete all my dialogue and replace it with stuff. So that's always different. In terms of the glory, I like the quote, I think it was David Fincher that said it was, they're saying, why do you take credit for everything? And he said, because when it goes wrong, I also get the blame for everything, you know, and I think that's true for directors. It's like, yeah, it's you haven't done all those different jobs, but certainly if it fucks up, it will be you that they'll be pointing the finger at, you know. So, yeah, I mean, it's in terms of comedy. I like to think that there's a difference. Well, there's a difference between comedy and characters that have a sense of humour. So a film can be funny and not a comedy, and I think the balance on that is whether or not the script itself is undercutting the characters and making fools of them by being pushing the boundaries of logic to make a point. But then a film where characters are naturally funny and say funny stuff, which is what real life is like, it's very rare not to have a laugh, I think, and most people have a sense of humour and exercise it, and it's part of communication, And so I always get a bit like, when I have to sit through something that's really miserable as a film, I find it slightly disingenuous and go, I'm not sure these people would be, I mean, obviously this situation is shit that they're in, whatever it is, but they still have a laugh about stuff. And I've been in the darkest of situations, and there's jokes to be had. Right, delicately, right. But still there's a sense of humour. But when you have something that is just like everyone's just grey-faced and miserable, I don't believe that's a kind of not quite humanity when I see that. So I've written films where characters make jokes within the structure of the film, but I've also made films where the film takes the piss out of the characters, and that's a different demarcation.
Right, because you said delicately, and I was wondering how do you plan it as to not sound condescending towards the characters? Because you have these characters which are regular blokes, right? Mm. And they're lovely in the way they're depicted. How do you balance this approach to not be, I don't know, condescending to some extent?
I think you do. You have, your job is you have to like the characters, and you don't start from a position of not liking them. I wouldn't set up a project and go, oh, this character's, I think he's an idiot and I'm going to follow his story. It's not that. Even if and it doesn't matter if they're doing bad things, but you've still got, because humanity is not, it's not as black and white hat as like cowboy movies would lead you to believe. Obviously there's a massive amount of grey all the time, and even the idea of evil itself is is problematic. People just have bad days and do bad things, but they also do good things, and it's a real person in a day might have an argument and then make up the argument and then get over it and be happy and see something really lovely, and then get in a road rage incident and then go home and get drunk and do something else. But so their day is like that, but a movie person's day is, it starts off and they do, and it's slowly, the arc of the movie is all very neat, and our lives aren't neat, I don't think.
That's true. As you probably noticed, I kind of tend to get carried away. So I'll get back to my first announcement. If you have questions, please do not hesitate.
Here we go.
Or we have done. Can we get a mic to the girl in the back?
Hi.
Hello.
First of all, I want to congratulate you on this entertaining madness that you created. And I have two questions in one. The first is, because I know you also edited the movie, so did you know from the beginning that the movie is going to look like this, or did you get new ideas while editing the movie?
You're talking about Bulk, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew it was going to look like. And I think the thing with Bulk is because it's so chaotic, the film, that you can't make that kind of chaos without planning. So it's very meticulously planned. I knew exactly what everything was in it and how it was going to be cut and where it... So in the process of it, it wasn't like a collage where it emerged out of months of editing. It was cut on the... I'd usually... At this point in my process, I am cutting on the day, usually. So I'm editing as I go, looking at it. And the only thing... There was two scenes that came out of I took out of the movie, and they were just. When I looked at the structure of it, I felt there was a bit of repetition, which we didn't need. So I took those two scenes out. But as the movie that you saw is what it was always going to be, and I think that has to be that way with low budget stuff, because you can't afford. There's a lot of big Hollywood movies now which are kind of vibed, where they're going, oh, what are we doing today? I don't know. Oh, can we blow that house up? Yeah, let's do it. And then they shoot for like 8-9 months, and then at the end they're now got to put it all together. Oh God, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know why that happened. And then they've got to reshoot again another third of the movie to bring it. And that's a great process if you've got the money for it, because then you've got all sorts of interesting stuff that you never would have thought of if you were just doing it in a straight way. But yeah, that if you're doing a low budget thing, you want every pound or euro or whatever you got to translate directly to the screen, and the more that don't get to the screen is the sadness. You know, that's money you spent that's wasted. So it's all about, for me anyway, it's all about planning. It's all super prescribed.
Okay. And now you said that you shot the movie in 10 days. And I wanted to ask you, how was the relationship and the work ethic with the actors? Did you rehearse before? Did they understand everything they need to do?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is about the script, again, is that with Bulk, is that it's a complicated film for an audience, but when you know the ending, it's not complicated. So the actors read the script and understood what it meant entirely, and there's no confusion about all the ins and outs of it. So they didn't have to understand it on the fly the way the audience does. So that side was all right. We didn't rehearse per se, but what they did do is record it all onto iPhone around their kitchen table, and I had that audio, and I kind of could listen to the whole film. And then, because it's all post-sunk as well, the film isn't, all the sound is replaced. So I got a chance to, a really strange thing happened where we took that recording that was recorded months before we shot, and it all matched their lips. And it was really strange. I'd never seen anything like it. So, but the thing about it was that they were totally committed to the movie, and they knew it was going to be quick, so they knew there'd be no fucking about and not learning the lines, because you're getting through a lot of stuff per day. And so they learnt it like a play, so it was fine. We get on set and go, this is it, boom, and then we'd go straight through it. And there's no finding it on set, like, oh, maybe I'll try it this way, but it's not like that. It's that they knew what they were doing, and I'd heard it all before, so I could agree it,
Thank you.
Cool.
There's another one. So just please pass the mic.
I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked the previous speaker of the day. We are living in a world in cinematography where we have these two opposite sides. We have Marvel, Disney, DC Comics, Super World, all this world with huge budgets, and they sell quite well. And on the other side, we have these independent movies that are filmed in a very short time with very low budgets, but they are communicating a more important message, and they're very attractive to the public. And also we have this theme of what does it make a film interesting for all the cultures, because for example, you have Romanian movies that speak to the Romanian public, you have Croatian movies who speak to the Croatian public, you have English movies that speak to the English public, you have American movies that speak to the American public. And how do you merge all these ideas in making a movie that speaks to all the languages, in taking the language barrier part, to speak to all the languages and to all the cultures? Thank you.
Crikey. Okay. Well, we got it right the first time with silent cinema, and then we ballsed it all up by putting sound into it. So silent cinema played everywhere. It was fine. Everyone understands the language of silent cinema, and they can understand it. You could export your movies wherever you wanted, and everyone would be cool with it. And the only bit of silent cinema that is retained is action cinema. So action cinema plays all over the world, and you don't have to think about the cultural differences pretty much, because people understand, people fighting stuff and stuff blowing up, and in the excitement as you watch it of action. And I found that when I did the Meg 2, that it was, we went through the normal process of an American film where you test it in cinemas, but only test it with Americans. You're not testing it with any other cultures. And they go, oh, and that's basically to find out if people just don't understand bits of it. And I was going, you're going to test it in Asia? You're not bothered? And they're like, no, it's fine. And so when it went out, and it played really well in Vietnam, like it was did $1 million in Vietnam and Thailand and all these places, and you could see why, because it's like, and that's why Jason Statham worked so well, because they understand the angry man frowning and fighting, and it's like it's in all cultures, so that just goes through. Now, if you're trying to do something a bit more complicated, I don't know. I mean, if you're doing something that's specific, and I suffer from it as much as anyone doing specific UK-based stuff. It's like it doesn't travel, because unless people are curious, you know, the curious audience is everywhere in every culture, but the general audience, you forget it. I mean, it's hard enough to do it in the home country to get people to watch stuff. I mean, people like the films, but it doesn't mean that there's a big audience for it even at home. So when anyone's watching it anywhere, you're like, oh, thank God, you know. But it's a different game. It's like the game of putting stuff out into cinemas and distribution and all that kind of thing. That fast flash in the pan, it's out in that week and it's so many screens and it's all scores and box office and like treated like sport. That's a different game from the slow burn of an indie movie, which is, you know, with Bulk, we're calling it the Forever Tour. We're just going out. I mean, we'll be doing like Q&As and screening it, you know, in 2-3 years' time. And the same thing happened with Field in England and Kill List and all these movies. So you're looking at it as it moves through the system. You can't expect, because you've got no money behind it, you can't expect it to smash through all these kind of, you know, to get into the various cultures of the various countries. Yeah, does that answer the question? Yeah, cool.
There is a question right in front, so can you bring the mic, please?
No, it wasn't made with AI.
No. It was yesterday, but I saw your film yesterday. I want to ask you if number 9 is any significance for you, because in the tarot card, it's mean the state before great change. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I got a similar question yesterday, and it's like there's specificity in Bulk, but there's also vagaries as well, and it plays with that kind of idea of like something means something, something doesn't, and you can dig into it and try and work it out or not, you know. And I think that side of it, I could kind of go, yeah, of course, number 9 is really significant, but hand on heart, probably couldn't say that, and that was one of the more arbitrary bits of it. But it's you know, the film itself is about having an information system that will create story by looking into it, and which humans are kind of programmed to do, and which is the great strength and the great weakness of narrative, I think. So, yeah.
Just one more from me, and I hope there.
He's keen.
Oh, perfect. In the back there.
Thank you. Hello, Ben, once again.
Hello.
2 questions, small ones, if possible. First, what draws you repeatedly to themes of British folklore? And the second is, what do you expect from the audience, generally?
What draws me to British folklore, I think, specifically I ended up, when I made Kill List, it was because I'd sat down and with my producer, Andy Stark, and we'd made a British crime film. Down Terrace was the first film I made, and it's like it was the most unpopular genre film you could make at that point. Like the British crime film was on its arse in the UK, no one wanted to see him, and he said, "You don't, we'll just make a horror film." So I was like, "Oh, all right." So I went away, and Kill List was made from. I felt like I'd work out what scared me, and I'd write it down, and I would hope that it would scare the audience, you know. So it wasn't necessarily folk horror. Folk horror at that point didn't really exist in terms of being a critical bracket. You know, it was, no one really talked about it. The Wicker Man existed and Blood and Satan's Claw, and there was a vague conversation about it, but it wasn't as strong as it is now. So that was it, really. I was afraid of the woods, and I was afraid of bands of religious people that didn't like you but didn't explain why. That was it. That's the nightmares I used to have about stuff, of people going and finding people in the woods with fire, and they're up to something, you don't know what it is, and then they turn around and see you spying on them and chase you. That was the main image that I started with. I've kind of gone back to folk stuff over time as it's developed, In the Earth, which is a film I did a few years ago, was a bit like trying to think about my responsibility to having a hand in creating this subgenre, and like what have I done, you know, and like how, and so In the Earth was about the way that we make stories, and how because there's a weird schism again. I was talking about with Wicker Man. It's like the idea that folk horror is somehow based in some kind of historical fact when it's pure bullshit that has been cooked up in the 1970s. A lot of it has no connection to any kind of history. It's a much more circuitous route, you know, and it comes from all sorts of places. Of like in the UK, they realised they sent out people to try and find what the folk songs were, because no one had recorded them, and then they sent people up and down the country in the kind of turn of the century to record these things, and they recorded them all down. But then people reinterpreted what these songs were, and they created this music, which is it's not folk music, but it's a new folk music. And then it's the same thing of the idea of the Volk that happened in Germany when they were kind of going, we'll invent a history for ourselves, and this stuff happens a lot. And in England, there was a thing called the Matter of the English, which happened at like 1500, where they kind of they had an island which was full of people that didn't agree with each other, and they decided to make a national myth that would draw us all together, and that's King Arthur. It's all pure bullshit, you know. It's like the King Arthur was some Welsh bloke, you know, with about 3 friends, and all the round table and all that stuff. It's all made up, you know. And so anyway, when I made In the Earth, I was trying to come to terms with that. I'd accidentally become part of this myth-making thing, and people were reading into Kill List that it was based on real things, and it wasn't, you know. So that's why I go back to folk. Thank you.
What do you expect from the audiences?
Sorry, that was the other question.
No.
Yeah.
I was thinking, do you eavesdrop when there's a screening of your film? How do they react? Do they laugh? Do they scream? Do they frown? I don't know. That's not that.
I think it's really difficult because on the micro level, you know, if I look at Twitter and I'm like, and one of my films come out, it'll be like someone goes, "Oh God, I really liked it." I'm like, "Yeah," and the next one, "I hated it." "Oh God," and you know, you could do that to yourself all day long, and each one means something because it's someone's reaction. So you're like, the trick is not to read them because that's bad, or you read them on aggregate, or you go, "I'll read 10," and if it's like 6 say they like it and 4 say they don't, then that's it, and never look at it again. And I've got a rule with kind of reviews, which is like, as long as there's a really terrible one, a really good one, and a middling one, and you don't read them again. Because that's the spectrum of reaction, and the internet will give you that every time. If you're feeling proud of yourself, and then you look on the internet, you can find everyone calling you a shit quite quickly. But also, you know, it's that thing of, I think I saw a thing with, I saw an interview with a writer the other day, and he said, people who review my books badly, I think, are idiots. And then people who review my books well, I think, are quite stupid as well. And it was like, this is the situation, you know. So you can't really invest in it too much. What do I expect from the audience? I don't expect anything. It's more have I read the room well enough? You know, is the thing entertaining, or have I totally alienated everyone? Is the fear. And then I play a numbers game on how many people we're going to alienate and how many people are going to enjoy the film, and you just have your fingers crossed that you're not dealing with, you know, out of 300 people, 1 person likes it. You know, you want at least half of them to like it. You know.
There's a question over there. Can we bring the mic to the here in the front? Gentleman in red.
Hello. You mentioned before Meg 2, so I was wondering how much is for you, how it means for you making a big budget movie like Meg for a big studio, comparing to a small independent movie. Where do you feel more comfortable, when you have a lot of money, or doing whatever you want, or searching for money for idea?
Well,
Thank you.
The thing is, it's like having more money doesn't mean you get to do whatever you want. It means you get to do much less than you want. So it's like, and it's basically like, if you make a movie for not much money, you've got much less money to get back before everyone gets their money back. And it means your audience can be a lot smaller, and therefore you can make a much weirder movies. But when you take the big money to do a big movie, you've got to get a lot of people to watch it, and they don't like weird stuff, and they want to see something more straightforward, like a man punching a shark. So then, you know, and your responsibility as a filmmaker at that point is to get the money back. So, you know, it swings and roundabouts. So I kind of really wanted to make the Meg, but I really wanted to make. I'd got to a point. Basically, we made Kill List, and it was so horrible. And I'd been to screenings of it, and like people were really upset. And there was a thing called the Kill List stare, where people are coming out of it like, "Oh my God, that was awful." And then we'd heard a report of someone in London had stood up at the end of the screening and shouted at the credits, "Fuck you, Kill List," and all this kind of stuff, and walked out. So I was like, "Oh yeah," and it was hard making the film. You know, it was like both Amy and I felt really rinsed out by it. It was just really hard work. And so at that point, I started thinking, well, I've done this thing to the audience. I probably should go swing the other way and do something a bit more cheery and happy and make a happy, more positive movie. So I started looking at stuff that was more upbeat while still making loads of grim horror films. But it's like an ocean liner. It takes a long time to turn. And I've been involved in, they were setting up a Tomb Raider movie, which I really wanted to do, but it collapsed because of COVID. And then the Meg turned up, and I was like, it's a big poppy movie. It's like a kid's movie. It's very bright colours, and it's fun, and it's got big action in it. And you get to talk to a global audience, you know. So of doing low budget or big budget, I don't mind either side. I like making films. But you just got to know what audience you're talking to when you do it, you know. So you don't want to take the shark movie and then try and make some kind of tone poem about your relationship with your father, because that's going to fall on deaf ears, both from the studio and the audience, you know.
But you have liberty of creation for a big budget studio, or you have some, I don't know, guidelines? You don't have to do this, you don't have to do this.
With the studio, I mean, and also there's stories of like the indie filmmakers getting crushed by the studio, and like, you know, how awful it is. And I had a really good time. It was fine, and as long as you lent into the poppiness and the funness of it, they were happy. And so, I mean, the hard thing about Meg was they just, like the script itself, there'd be an action sequence, and it would just say, the greatest action sequence ever made. And it wouldn't have any detail of what it was. And I'd go, okay. And then they come to me and they're like, what have you got? You can spend all this money. What do you want to do? I'm like, oh shit, this is kind of paralyzing and difficult. So I was like, and then it was like a long process of storyboarding and working out. But the responsibility of having no more excuses. I can't lean back and go, well, they wouldn't do it, but they would. It's like it was whatever we could come up with. But I couldn't change the script necessarily. So that was harder. So that side of it's now not my responsibility on Meg, but the actional was. So, yeah.
Oh, we have already two questions. Where should we start? In the front, because the mic is near, but then we go to the gentleman in the back.
Thank you. My question is kind of related to the previous response. It's about the working on a film which you have written yourself, compared to films such as Meg or Normal, which you were not the writer on. The differences in directing those movies.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Hollywood movies, and I'm a big fan of the studio system, certainly of the 40s and 50s. And if I was, you know, if I could I had a genie and I could do anything, become anything. The idea of being a Hollywood director in the 40s, where you'd be doing a cowboy movie and then doing a musical and then doing an adaptation of a book, and it was none of the money nonsense. It was always, you were just making stuff one after the other. Sounds great to me. That would have been cool. So it's I mean, I think in terms of like the differences between writing it yourself, it's not just writing it myself. It's usually being part of the production. My production company with Andy Stark is making the film, so we're like properly in control of it, versus making like a studio film or something where you're coming in as a director for hire, and then it's much more craft. You know, but then sometimes you get a chance to re-edit the script, and you have that long conversation. That can happen, so you can really put your stamp on it. But sometimes not. But it's like picking your battles with those things. But the start, you know, how it works is very different on every single thing that you do, and TV and advertising and all these things have totally different structures in terms of where you stand in the waterfall of control over the project. So sometimes it's like you just take your pleasures where you can find them, and you go, okay, well, I'm not the script writer. I'm not maybe the. This is where the auteur film theory kind of breaks down. It's like sometimes you're just not in control of stuff, but you do the best you can with what you got, even though, and it doesn't mean you don't love the project as much. It just means you have a different responsibility, and that's never really shown in one movie to the next. How that's structured. So you go, okay, I'm a craftsman. I'm going to make this the best I can, or oh my God, I'm now responsible for every aspect of it. I'm in the hot seat, which is what I am usually in the lower budget stuff.
So do you like the, maybe not ownership, but the credit within yourself that you feel for the projects, it's also different for you on the project that you have written compared to and produced?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a different job. It's like it's like a TV job or an advertising job or a studio job, an indie job, like a no-budget indie job. They're different, and they're structured in different ways.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but I know you have a background in animation and also that you're a fan of Moviedrome. How did these two things particularly impact your filmmaking?
Right, first off, it's a bit disingenuous to animators to say I have a background in animation. So I have animated stuff, but I'm no animator. You know, I was forced into it in the birth of the internet, when the only way to get moving images onto the internet was to do flash animation. So I had to learn that, and I liked it because it meant I could do stuff from my bedroom and not have to talk to anybody. So I've done a lot of that stuff. But in terms of like the art of animation, no, that's not me. Moviedrome, which was a TV show on in the UK in the late 80s to early 90s or something like that, I think it was a show that the director Alex Cox presented, and he would usually would be a double bill, and they'd have dug out these movies. It was a weird one because he doesn't actually go out and pick the movies, but they were just things that the BBC itself had on license, and then they would present them and talk about them. And for a generation of people, and certainly for little kids who couldn't go to flea pit cinemas in the UK when they were still doing proper rep, was a place that they could watch these films. You know, and I think I saw Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, Two-Lane Blacktop, stuff like that. You know, The Shootist, and even the Terminator, I think I saw on Moviedrome. So it was an education for us. But it's a very short snapshot in time. But it was, yeah, a proper curated alternative to the mainstream. And yeah, and it's a shame they don't. I think it's a general problem of like a lack of curation now. It's like it's much harder now for kids when they're looking at like YouTube, and it's just like everything's there. And like, where do you start to look at it? Whereas it was a bit easier for us, I think.
Can I ask one more thing? If you have to choose just one of your films to have on Moviedrome, which one would it be?
I think it would be A Field in England would make the most sense for Moviedrome. Because it was built, Field in England was meant to be like and Scala is the Scala Cinema in London, which Moviedrome's basically the TV equivalent of Scala, I think. And Field in England was designed to be a midnight movie for the Scala. So, or a movie you might see on Channel 4 accidentally, which was a channel in the UK that was a bit more interesting than BBC and ITV. So, and I'd seen a lot of films where you just, which I miss this as well, where you just turn on the TV and there's something's been 10 minutes in and you don't know what it is, and then you go, oh, this is fucking weird, and then you watch it, and it takes you like 20 years to find out what it was that you'd seen. That experience is gone now as well, which is a shame.
Any other questions? We have one gentleman in the back.
Hello. Considering that Dracula was born in a British mind.
Irish, I believe. Yeah, got to get that right. Come on.
What's your position with regards to the vampires? Because it looks like the British are into ghosts, mainly. Well, you know, I'm thinking of such references as Jarmusch or Polanski. That's why I'm asking.
I mean, first, I'd like to apologise for the stag do all wearing Dracula capes that was on the plane that I flew in with. Sorry about that, everyone. I apologise for my country. I don't know where I feel. It amazes me the never-ending kind of love for vampires in cinema. It's like I made a film called Free Fire, which was set in a warehouse, which there was a shootout in a warehouse, and I got endless shit about it because it was a bit like Reservoir Dogs. And yet it doesn't matter if you're making a Dracula movie. You could do 3 a week and no one would say anything about that. So I don't get it. And I'm not scared of vampires. I'm not even that big into the Universal monsters, you know, all of them. They've been rinsed, they've been done, you know. And we're kind of up the other side of it, where it's like now they're all heroes again, and they've turned the monsters into heroes, and it's really dull. But I don't know. I don't know why they're obsessed by it. I think it's because it's a little bit kinky, and it's all that blood-sucking stuff, so it's all right or something. But yeah, sorry, I don't like it.
But is there a British director or your personality in cinema who was concerned with vampires? Because I'm lacking something there.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, the Hammer films were a kind of reinvention of it at the time, with Christopher Lee. Right. But even that, I was never really understood Hammer. You know, I remember as a kid they would have the movies on, and they'd be quite late, and it would be like, oh, these are really racy, sexy movies, and you'd wait up all night to watch these things, and it'd be, yeah, what? No, they just got people with ruffs on and kind of, yeah, it's not a popular view.
Yeah,
people love Hammer.
I think they made great advertising of that. I particularly remember posters from Hammers, which were racy, as you said, or sort of sexy. I mean,
well,
the ad was better than the film to some extent.
The closest, I mean, the thing that we saw more as kids was the bubblegum cards. There was a Hammer set of bubblegum cards, and we got those, and it was like, oh, what's going on? But we never saw the movies, you know. So, how are we doing? Quietness. Come on.
I have one until somebody makes up his or her mind, in case there are any other questions. You know, I was thinking, because I'm seeing in the audience students and filmmakers at their beginnings. Can you give them the bad news and the good news?
Yeah.
I mean, you made your first film like in a couple of days, down terrace and everything.
Yeah, 8 days.
You worked in advertising, am I right? So
I'm a really bad advert myself for this stuff, because and Backrooms and all these and Obsession and all these things are proving me like my route through the industry is not great, because I didn't, you know, Down Terrace, the first film I did was because I wanted to make a film before I was 40, so I was already way too late, you know, and it took me that long to get my shit together to do it, and I think that I couldn't have done it any other way, I don't think, because it just took me a long time to understand how and have the confidence to make something. But I think now that the democratization of it in terms of the technology is one thing, but also YouTube is so powerful in terms of being able to work out how to do something. If you and now ChatGPT as well. If you go, I don't understand how this works, that's it. You can find out within seconds. And I remember, as an old man remembers, I had to buy how-to books. So we buy them off Amazon, like how to use Final Cut, and be this big slab of a book would turn up and you work it out. But now if I've got a problem, I just go, how do I do this? And he goes, oh, you do it like that. And I go, oh, sweet. So I think that all that side of it, the complexity of the software and the techniques are all up for grabs. If you're curious, you can find out. So that's great. The bad news is that as much as the filmmaking itself has, the technology is advanced, the distribution has not. And we're still dealing with a distribution system from 20 years ago, and it's weighted heavily in favor of the distributors. And as technology has moved on, it's destroyed great little money earners like DVD and Blu-ray, which is a real shame. So there's less ways of earning money from it at the grassroots than there used to be. So that's a shame. but you can make a film. That's pretty straightforward now, and shouldn't be expensive. I mean, the first film I did down Terrace cost us, it was £6,000 at the time, and we shot for 8 days, and it looked great, and it won loads of awards, and was the start of my career. And and everyone involved in that kind of had a career from those 8 days. And that we didn't even knew what we'd done at that point. We finished it, and we watched, I edited it in about a week and a half, and we looked at it back and went, oh shit, it's a film. And it was great, and it was such a rush, and we were totally prepared just to throw it away if it was bad as well, because we could just about afford that £6,000. I mean, it cost more money to sell it because we had to clear some music and some bits and bobs, and everyone's pays were deferred on it, so they got paid after the fact. But yeah, I think it's a great time to be a young filmmaker in that respect. But now it's all about building audiences yourself,
Can you talk a bit about the grind? I mean, or the works that you've been given, and you probably considered at the time when you were young rubbish and anything, but you still had to do it in order to, I don't know, to make ends meet. How do you make a system for yourself to work and get better at it, even if you don't particularly like the job in advertising, for instance?
I think what the first thing was the idea of like that you get paid for stuff. And that's, I was wanting to be a script writer, but I knew a lot of people that thought that as soon as you wrote something, you needed to be paid. And the power of, if you're prepared not to be paid, then you can write lots of spec stuff, and you just have to write a lot. So writing, like Amy and I used to call it the decade of doing, which was like 25 to 35. And we just wrote tons of stuff, and it was like, when do you get time to write? Well, you get up early, so you get up, you've got your job, and you have to be up at 8:30, so you get up at 5:30 and you write, and that's what we did for years. And that side of it, the writing muscle has to be developed through writing. You can't. There's no shortcut to that.
So I imagine you write sort of every day or every other day, right? So there's a certain rhythm to it, or a certain.
Yeah, we're just writing scripts all the time, and I think we were writing novels and scripts and stuff like that. And then when the internet kind of kicked off, I was making stuff all the time and putting it online. So, and that was all for nothing. So there was 10 years of that as well. It was like thousands of things. But while I was doing that, I started getting work because people saw it. And I don't know if it could work now in that way, but it's kind of everything changes every 6 months. But I think there are ways of earning a living from the edges of the internet.
Don't forget, there's still an opportunity to ask questions, so please don't leave with any questions.
Oh, there we go.
There's someone in the back, the lady in the back.
Hello. Can you take us through your casting process? If you write with a particular actor in mind, or you just...
Yeah, I mean, from low budget, right from the beginning, I'd made a lot of improv movies that we never released, like 10 years of those, and they would be with non-actors. So we would just look around and see who was any good, or I thought would be good in a scene, and then I'd work with them. So I built up and learned kind of how to direct through doing that. And then when it came to the first film, I'd been doing TV for a bit, so I knew a load of actors, and then we didn't cast it. We per se, we didn't audition people. I just wrote the characters to fit the actors that we had, and I asked them, and then hoped to God they said yes, because it would have been a fuck up if they didn't. And then that's kind of how it went forward. I was really lucky because in my TV work, I did a sketch comedy show and a comedy drama, which both had massive casts. So I knew a lot of people, and I knew that they could do lots of stuff, and I'd worked with them. So I knew, which is almost, them being good is one thing, but them being good on set and having that connection is almost as important. So just went through my diary at that point, and I did that for many films. So the same actors appear in my films a lot, and they're because I know them, and I write in their meter so that we can do things where we have no rehearsal because I know it'll be all right, and I write to their strengths, I hope. But later it becomes more traditional, where there'd be a casting agent, and then they would do auditions. And when I do that, I don't like to be in the room with the actors. I like the first rounds of auditions all to be on tape, because the thing about being in the room with people is empathy kicks in, and it can cloud your judgment in terms of you like them physically. You go, oh, I like you, you're smiley face, you're great. And then you're casting these people, and then they come on and they're acting, you're like, oh God, they're shit, fuck. How did I got completely tricked because they were nice. So you look at them on screen, which is where they're going to end up. So, and they look different and perform differently. Otherwise you get, I think for me it's like unpacking theatre from film. So it can happen on set as well, where you go, it's a great theatre performance because it's physical and it's in the room with you. But when you get it back to the edit suite, it's like, oh shit, they're moving really slowly or something, or not. You know, they've done all this stuff and they've milked every bit of it, and it's like, it doesn't work on the screen, but it works really well on the stage. So it's a bit of that. But in other ways, you know, when you're casting actors that are like famous, which won't do auditions, a lot of it we found, Amy and I would watch interviews rather than watching their performances in films. So we watch them on chat shows and see what they're like, and see what their tells are, and how much they use of their real selves in their performances, and how flexible that they are. And that is really useful. It's good to see people when they're not on, you know, and then you can see through their on-screen performances a bit better.
We still have a question here, and probably time for just a couple of more. So,
thank you once again. I wanted to ask, because you have a background in sketch comedy, you said as well,
yeah.
And now, for example, we have the example of Obsession, a movie directed by a comedian, a horror movie directed by a comedian. I wanted to ask you if you see any connection between comedy that you were doing before.
Well, Get Out
horror.
is also
Get Out as well.
Yeah,
Get Out, Obsession.
Do I see a connection between horror and comedy?
Yes.
Yeah, it's the same. Effectively, it's a build-up and a payoff and a punchline. It's like horror is exactly the same as comedy in that respect. It's the same structural stuff, callbacks, all those things, and then a reaction from the audience, which is either a laugh or a gasp or a scream. So it's all the same muscle thing. You know, it doesn't work with drama in the same way at all. You know, so.
But do you have the same in terms of horror? Do you have the punchline, let's call it punchline, already in mind? Do you think your film, in terms, it's going to end like this, or it's going to have this sort of jump scare?
You've got to think that.
Right. Okay.
I mean, I think it's the Kubrick said was that a film has 4 non-submersible units. So 4 scenes that are indelible, that you'll remember after the movie, and then you build the movie around those moments. There's no point writing a well-crafted drama, a logical plot without those things in it, because it's just boring. Or not boring, but people just go, yeah, all right. But if you've got like Nicholson coming through the door and screaming, "Here's Johnny!" You know, I'm sure that was like he thought about that first, and then well, the one I always think about, and I'm sure that this is just a scurrilous gossip. I'm sure it's not true, but in Inception, I'm sure they had the idea for the rotating corridor first, and then they worked it backwards to make the movie around it. You know what I mean? Sorry, Chris. No, that's probably absolutely not true, but you know.
Please.
And obviously, from the time of advertising, you must be familiar with a very detailed storyboard. And do you prepare it for your movies in such a detail? And how do you stick to it during the proper shooting?
I think storyboards are... I storyboard religiously now. I never used to. I used to make it up on the spot because I thought that's what people did. who are my film heroes. But as I got older, I kind of lost my nerve and thought it was probably better to board stuff. But my boarding is more about kind of actualizing the film first in a way, so they're used as aids for me to like hallucinate the movie. So I look through the boards and I can see the film a lot clearer and more specifically than I ever would if I was just trying to see it in my head. And if you see it in your head, you tend to not concentrate on the boring bits like people coming in and out of scenes or whatever, and you just go, oh yeah, it's a big car explosion, brr, I can see all that. And so boards keep you honest in that respect and make you think evenly across the whole movie about what you're doing. But on set, I don't really look at them. So I draw my own boards, and I'll draw the whole film from frame one to the end. But the act of drawing has put the film into my head in a way that just reading it would never do. And because it's a visual medium, it needs the visual side of it needs someone to stand up for it, and it's not just prose. And the kind of everything is about scripts for some reason, and it's not about images usually. So everyone's fixated on the script and the script, but it's not the script. It's a marriage of the script and images. And if you don't get that balance right, then you're basically filming a radio play, you know. The storyboards help with all the departments so they can see to give you the right shape of set to move your camera around in. But then on the day you need to give space back to the actors in case they've got an idea, and you don't want to stop that. You know, you don't want to. Otherwise, you can see it in movies. You get these really stiff performances because they're not happy about stopping here and having to turn and do all this shit which you've planned for weeks. You know, so there's a kind of give and push and pull there. You know, you want to be specific about camera, but you also don't want to totally tie down their human performances. You know.
I think we are kind of like running out of time, unfortunately. Do we still have time for a question?
No, I'm really sorry.
All right.
We can continue with chit-chat or autographs and
Yeah.
wonderful photos with our guests in the lobby, because we have to prepare for the next masterclass. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben Wheatley. I think there's another screening of Bulk this afternoon, so go watch it. There's joy of cinema in it.